Hello, and welcome to the Kathleen Spracklin podcast. I'm a woman on a mission to assemble a cadre of writers, thinkers, and teachers who are transforming the world one character at a time. And it all starts with one thing: a deep understanding of human motivations, why people do what they do, and the forces that drive them. This is episode number 8. Today I'm going to go with you a little bit about why I absolutely love working with an Antoinette Zettelkasten. Yesterday I talked a little bit about syntopic reading, and today I'm going to give you a concrete example of how this works sequentially when you use an Antoinette Zettelkasten. I'm going to stick with the same quote that I derived from Character Strengths and Virtues, an incredibly massive tome by Christopher Peterson and Martin Seligman. And this quote comes from page 4, quite early, where they are talking about how character strengths provide the backdrop and the necessary conditions for a good life. Character strengths make a good life possible. Well, my people that I want to care for, the people that I want to nurture and encourage and help shape, are fiction writers. And for fiction writers, it's not just character strengths that are important, but also character weaknesses, because the interplay of strengths and weaknesses make a good story possible. So when I read that part about making a good life possible, that inspired a thought in my mind about a good story possible, needing both sides of the coin. So now I wanted to log both the information that I got the quote from the book along with my reflection on it. And so when I filed it in my Antoinette Zettelkasten, the nature of a Zettelkasten is that the idea will be filed near its most closely related thought that's already in the file box. In this case, the thought came from the book by Dan Romm, Show and Tell, a book about what makes a great presentation. And he presented 3 rules of presentations. Lead with the truth and the heart will follow. Lead with the story and understanding will follow. Lead with the eye and the mind will follow. Well, it was that word story that connected up with making a good story possible. It was the glue that glued these 2 cards together and made them feel like they needed to be near one another in my Zettelkasten. Well, the interesting thing about that juxtaposition was when I started interplaying these ideas, an explosion occurred. Because now, think about it. A researcher in the field of psychology is going to be giving us some truth about what makes a good life possible. Well, we know from Dan Romm that if we lead with that truth, the heart will follow. So if we are a fiction writer and we draw on the truths that we're going to learn from this book, we are going to be able to create stories that touch the heart of our readers. And considering the size of that tome, it's really massive, we're going to have a lot of stories possible. And we're going to know a little bit more about how we're going to play them out, because if we lead with the story about what? About how weaknesses can be transformed into strengths, thereby taking a not-so-good life and showing that developing the strength makes a good life possible. So then our readers will understand, based on our story, that this type of transformation can make a good life possible. Then, if we are also careful, Dan Romm gives us an extra tidbit that these 2 thoughts did not give us. He has presentation rule number 3. lead with the eye, and the mind will follow. So now we have one more thing we know we need to do. When we tell our story, the words that we choose, we'll want them to be visual. We'll want them to be active. We'll want to show the reader something that, yes, he's reading words, but almost seeing it in his mind's eye. And when that happens, we'll have the complete package. We will be able to create stories that produce positive transformations in our readers, because they will be able to find a great story, because we're going to have other mechanisms of telling a great story, such as the classes that we're going to find on LPC, the Lilliputian Publishing Co-op. I'm only one teacher there. We also have Victoria Crowder and Quentin Payne, and perhaps other teachers will join us later. So there, at that site, you'll have a complete set of training to help make fantastic stories and tell them really, really compellingly. But we know that at the very core of it, we're going to be telling some important truths, and we're going to be leading people's hearts. And how can you beat that? How can you beat that? So stay tuned, and we're going to watch this happen again and again and again with what we're going to be covering in this book. So thank you so very much for joining me. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.